Gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Robert Spencer.
Well, thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. No, before we go, a couple things. Why did Moshe Dayan do that? Why did he think that it was imperative to get that Israeli flag off the Temple Mount? Why, this is the same question twice, why did Trump stop the Israelis from continuing to bomb Iran and possibly taking out the Islamic regime in Tehran? Same question, same answer. In both cases, they thought that if they did that, they would be making a gesture of goodwill to the other side that would be reciprocated. Really, right? This is how diplomacy works. Trump said it. Moshe Dayan said it as well. This is how modern realpolitik works. That you show goodwill to the other guy, and then he thinks, well, look how wonderful they are. We're going to be as wonderful to them in return. Now, let me give you, open your Qurans to chapter 47, verse 35. Do not weaken and call for peace while you have the upper hand. For Allah is with you and will never deprive you of the reward of your deeds. Do not weaken and call for peace when you have the upper hand. When Moshe Dayan does that, when Trump does that, they think, look, they're coming to us and making concessions to us. We have the upper hand. This is not the time to make peace. This is the time to press forward. So they think just the opposite of what the Western foreign policy experts think that they're going to react. They react in just the opposite way. They think that they're showing weakness, and we have to take advantage. Now, there's another aspect to all this. Well, actually, there are many aspects to all this. But one of them is, what is a caliphate to start with? The name of this evening is the Rising Caliphate, and I expect that many of you know what a caliphate is, and many of you are perfectly happy to think, well, it has some kind of Islamic government, Islamic state, the rule of Sharia, and so on. But there's a whole lot more to it, and it's related to what I was just saying. Caliphate is a concept that is much larger than just Islamic government. Khalifa means successor, and the caliph is the successor of Muhammad as the military, political, and spiritual leader of the Islamic world. There were always caliphs in Islam all through history, from Muhammad to, after Muhammad, what is known as the rightly guided caliphs. There were four of them, and three of them were assassinated. And this was the golden age, actually, of Islam. The Khalifa Rashidun is considered to be the time when Islam was most pure and most fully implemented, and that's when three of the caliphs were assassinated. So you can draw your own conclusions from that. But then we have the Umayyads, the Abbasids, and the Ottomans. And then what happened?
World War I.
Yes, World War I, the Ottoman Empire crumbles, and the Turkish government is taken over by a man, Mustafa Kemal, who called himself Ataturk, like Attaboy. And, not really, but he did call himself Ataturk. And he was extraordinarily singular in Islamic history. There were a lot of terrible things about him, and I'm not up here to say that he was a good man, but there was an extraordinary thing that he did. And that was, he said, you know, we just lost this war, and we've just lost our empire. And what went wrong? Islam. He said the reason why the empire fell was because it was tied to the idea of Sharia as the law of Allah, the perfect law, and that law is not adequate for the modern world. The Western world is victorious. We're going to reconstitute a secular Turkey as a Western-style republic. And he abolished the Caliphate. 1924. If you read the communiques, is this thing on? If you read it seems to go up and down, doesn't it? It was too loud before. Very well. I'll speak softly. The Caliphate is gone, and the Islamic world is disunited. If you read the communiques of every terror group, every jihad terror group in the world, from Al-Qaeda to ISIS to Boko Haram, any one of them, Al-Shabaab, any one of them you want to name, they will all say, 1924, that's when our troubles began. The Caliphate was never the sole Islamic government, and it was certainly never perfect implementation of Islamic law. But it has a mythologized status among the terror groups that they have to fight to restore the unity of the Islamic world. The Islamic world has fallen into disunity and subjugation to the Western powers, and they have to throw that off, restore the Caliphate, reunite the Muslims, and wage jihad against the rest of the world. That's the idea behind all the jihad groups. Now, what does this have to do with Israel and with the United States? It has everything to do with it. Because all of this is a tremendous insult to Islam. The fact that this happened has caused a tremendous crisis of faith in the Islamic world. That is, the fact that there's no caliphate. And that that's why the terror groups arose. As a matter of fact, the Muslim Brotherhood itself was founded in 1928 in order to work toward the restoration of the caliphate. And all of the jihad terror groups come out of the Muslim Brotherhood, or most of them. Now, all the Islam, not all, but quite a few of the flags of the various Muslim countries are green. Why are they green? Do they just like green? Maybe they're Packers fans? What is it?
The Four Horsemen.
They are green because Islam is supposed to be growing forever in a perpetual springtime. It's not in autumn, it's not in winter, Islam is in spring. It's always coming to life. It's always getting bigger. This is what happens in the springtime. So, along with that idea comes the idea that any land that the Muslims conquer belongs to the Muslims forever. And this is because you don't roll back. That's fall and winter behavior. You are always going forward and growing and advancing. That's the springtime. You have to always also remember that the Caliphate, the successor, the Caliph, and his Caliphate are military and political and not just religious. The Sharia has been sold to the American public. A tremendous deception has been carried out over the last 20 years by Islamic groups in the United States, saying Sharia is just personal and family law. It's about marriages and things like that. And it does. It is, yes. But it is also political, expansionist, supremacist, aggressive, and violent. And it is all those things because Muhammad, according to Islamic tradition, was all those things. And it was part of the Islamic program from the beginning that it was imperative that they fight to conquer all of the world ultimately and bring it under this rule of the perfect rule of Allah, which is Sharia. Muhammad, according to a hadith, a report about his words and deeds, he says, I have been commanded to fight against people until they confess that there is no God but Allah, and I am his messenger. And when they do, their lives and their property will be safe from me. In other words, when they don't, their lives and property are not safe. that they can be killed and their property seized, and there's no crime in either one. And the Muslims have this responsibility to continue to fight in imitation of Muhammad in order to advance Islam. So, we have this ideology that is calling for perpetual advance, perpetual growth, perpetual conquest. Then we have the not so rosy reality where the thing is in decline and then it dissolves altogether, and then it's even replaced by a foreign model of governance, and Turkey becomes a secular republic. And so, what does the Quran say about that? You can turn, for example, to chapter 2, verse 191, drive them out from where they drove you out. Drive them out from where they drove you out. So, if Turkey was once ruled by Islamic law, then there are people who believe they have a responsibility before the supreme being, the creator of all things, to fight against the government there, drive it out and replace it with an Islamic government. And of course, it's not just Turkey. There's an even greater insult to Islam, and that is Israel. Why is Israel an insult to Islam? Because Israel is not only a place that was once ruled by Islamic law that is ruled by Islamic law no longer, but it's ruled by the Jews. Chapter 5, verse 82 of the Quran. The strongest in enmity to the believers are the Jews and the idolaters. So the Quran tells a believing Muslim that the people who hate you the most are the Jews, which often translates in practice to the people you should hate the most are the Jews. But it's a double insult to Islam that not only have they lost this territory, and it's no longer governed by Islamic law, but also it's governed by the people who hate the Muslims the most, according to the book. So, you have people of this mindset, and this is the mindset that governs the vast majority of the people in Gaza and in the Palestinian Authority, that is Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. And what are they going to think when Israel is established? They're going to think it has to be destroyed. Drive them out from where they drove you out. Notice this is not about the Nakba, 1948, the supposed driving out of the Arabs by the Israelis, by the IDF, at the time of the founding of the State of Israel. That's mostly a myth anyway. There were some instances, but for the most part, the Arabs left because the Arab Higher Committee told them to leave. And that is well documented. You can read all the documentation of it in my book, The Palestinian Delusion, as well as in other places. The drive you out where they drove you out is it's a bigger thing than that. It has to do with the fact that the place was once ruled by Islamic law, and it isn't anymore. And so it has to be restored. So there is no Israel that would ever be acceptable to the Arabs in that area. It doesn't matter if they have the Temple Mount or not. Moshe Dayan thought, if we show goodwill and give there are all these rules that were devised by Moshe Dayan that are still in place. And there's been pressure lately to roll them back. And Itamar Ben-Gvir and the Israeli government is especially working to roll them back. But they're still in place, where the Muslims can go onto the Temple Mount anytime, in any number, no problem. But the Israelis are severely restricted, can only go up there at certain times, and can't pray. And if it even looks like you're mouthing silent prayers, they'll throw you out. And this was all because he thought, we will show them goodwill, and they will show us goodwill in return. However, there is not an Israel even the size of a postage stamp that they would accept. There is not any kind of accommodation. This is an absolute maximalist ideology that we're dealing with. And so, then you might say, well, wait a minute. Why, if that is true, did they ever get involved in these negotiations, like the Camp David Accords and Oslo and the Roadmap for Peace and all that business? If they always just wanted the whole ball of wax and weren't going to settle for anything less, then why did they ever come to the table to talk? Well, there are certain different ways to go about getting what you want. And you can say, like Hamas, we're not going to negotiate. We're going to try to destroy you. Or you can say, like the Palestinian Authority, we want to destroy you, yes, and we will happily let you help us by giving us part of what we want in a negotiated settlement. And then we'll take it and we'll insist that we have to have war. And so the one thing you can be certain of is there ever is a Palestinian state. You know that France and the UK, they're going to declare a Palestinian state. And if they somehow manage to construct some kind of Palestinian state, then that will not be the end of it either. Because then the jihadis will go back to waging jihad to get the rest. Now there's a very interesting passage in the Quran in chapter 59, verse 2 in particular, where Allah is making the enemies of the Muslims destroy their own houses. And they destroy their homes by their own hands because Allah has turned against them. And so the Muslims don't even have to wage war because the non-Muslims are destroying their houses themselves. That's the kind of thing that's going on when there are negotiations for peace and discussions of establishing a Palestinian state. That is how an informed and believing Muslim is going to view those negotiations. And it's not just Israel either, as we all know. And Frank has done yeoman work for 20-some years, well, 18 years, because nobody knew it existed before 2007. The explanatory memorandum for the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States is a document that was found during an FBI raid of the Holy Land Foundation, which was at that time the largest Muslim charity in the United States. FBI raided it, carried out cartons full of documents, and they found this program for the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. And the most famous part of the document goes something like this. The brothers must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it falls and Allah's religion is victorious over other religions. By their hands. You see, that is a direct reference to chapter 59, verse 2 of the Quran, where Allah has cursed the unbelievers and they're destroying their homes by their own hands. And that's what we do when we sit down and say, let's make a deal, and we can give you this, and we'll keep that, and we'll compromise, and we'll come to a wonderful solution that everybody will like, and it will bring peace. And the opposition thinks they're destroying their own house by their own hands, just like Allah said. Now, it's also the United States that was the target of that explanatory memorandum. And it also must be emphasized that Israel and the United States are facing exactly the same foe. And this is something that has been obfuscated in so many different ways over the years that it bears reiterating. That not only do they chant death to Israel in Iran, but they chant death to America. And not only do they want to destroy the Jewish state, but they want to destroy the United States as well. Now, the thing about that commonality, it all has to do with Islam. Once again, the Islamic Republic of Iran, you've all seen the maps. It's over here. Israel is way over here. They don't share a common border. They don't have competing economic interests. They don't have any kind of dispute at all. Actually, you were just saying it was a Western-style republic, Iran, before 1979. So what exactly makes Israel Iran's worst enemy? Islam. What makes the United States Iran's great enemy? Islam. The Iranian regime is an Islamic republic. And so because Islam teaches all these things that I'm telling you and more, the Iranian regime, the mullahs, look out at Israel and they see that is what we must work toward destroying. Because that is our responsibility as Muslims. I'll give you more. Quran chapter 9 verse 14 and 15 it says, fight them and Allah will punish them by your hands. You see, Allah will punish them by your hands. You're the executors of the wrath of Allah. In the Judeo-Christian tradition it says, vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay. But in the Quran, vengeance is the Muslims. They are the ones who punish people, and they're giving them the punishment of Allah. So when Allah is cursing these people and making them turn against themselves and destroy their own houses, you also have to fight them because Allah is punishing them through you. This is why when they commit these acts of violence, and you see sometimes some guys stabbing people on the street and screaming Allahu Akbar, and then they get him and they arrest him, and he's walking along to prison and he's grinning. Have you ever seen that? Why is he so happy? Because he knows that he has done a great good deed for Allah. He has acted as the executor of Allah's wrath against the unbelievers. And so, he knows he's going to get his reward in paradise. You know, the big bordello. And that's a huge inducement, especially for young men. There was an interesting story that, if you'll pardon the aside, I didn't plan to talk about this, but a few years back there was this kid. He was 13 years old, and he came in from Judea and Samaria, and he had a bomb strapped to it. And the IDF discovered that he had the bomb at a checkpoint, and they have these sophisticated machines that roll out and disarm somebody, so they don't have to go do it themselves and risk getting blown up. And so this kid, he's standing there in his underwear, and this machine is taking the bomb off him. And he calls out to the soldiers, how am I going to get to paradise now and get the virgins? He was absolutely upset, because you see, you have a culture where you have such a division between the sexes, and you can't have any ordinary contact. So you can imagine being an adolescent boy would drive you crazy, and you might think, hey, that's a great way that I can finally relieve the pressure here. Just blow myself up. But anyway, I digress. Now, I'm telling you a lot about subversion and stealth jihad and manipulating the infidels into destroying themselves and so on. But terror also must be noted. That terror is at the heart of this. you know why the Islamic Republic of Iran is so repressive? Because it's of Islam. Once again, it all comes, you can just answer every question that way and you'd be right. There is only one tool the Quran gives a government to deal with those who rebel. Strike terror in the enemies of Allah. And the Quran in chapter 5, that's chapter 8, verse 60. Chapter 5, verse 33 says that those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and spread corruption in the land should either be killed or crucified or their hands and feet cut off on opposite sides. Very, very tough measures designed to strike terror into the heart of anybody who dares to rebel. And the Islamic Republic of Iran actually prosecutes people for the crime of corruption in the land, which is from that passage of the Quran. And corruption in the land is whatever they want to say it is, you know? They decide. But then they can carry out these repressive measures. And the whole idea is to terrorize people into submission. Islam means submission, and the whole thing is submission based on terror. The Muslim man submits to Allah, because if he doesn't, there are lots of lavish descriptions of hellfire all over the Quran. You know, Allah's going to roast your skin, and as soon as it's gone, burnt away, He'll give you a new skin and burn that one off, and pour molten lead down your throat, and all kinds of terrible things. And it goes on and on and on telling you about that. So the Muslim man is terrified, and he gets into line. The Muslim woman, the Muslim man can beat the Muslim woman, you know, and not only if she's disobedient, but the Quran in chapter 4, verse 34 says that from a woman whom you fear disobedience, beat them. So if you're afraid she might get out of line tomorrow, you can beat her today.
Wow.
So she's terrorized into submission. And then the non-Muslims, who are subjugated under the rule of Islamic law in the perfect Sharia state. And if they say, you know, this is not a very good system, and you're depriving me of basic rights, well, they can just be killed just for saying that. And you ever notice how the Christians in Gaza, they keep defending Hamas and defending the Muslims? Well, they know the rules very well. They know that if they don't, then they'll be killed. So it's terror all around. The non-Muslims are in terror of the Muslims. The women are in terror of the men. The men are in terror of Allah. The whole thing is built on terror. Terror is the heart and center of it all. And so this is the big mistake, the biggest part of the mistake that Moshe Dayan made and that Trump made, unfortunately, for all the love that I have for him, that I know you have for him, and for all the good things that he's done. Big mistake in stopping Israel from ending the regime there in Iran. And that is, they will see this, the mullahs in Tehran, as a sign that he is afraid, that he is terrorized, and that he doesn't dare to go farther because he's afraid of them. And this will only bring about even more terror and even more suffering on the part of innocent people, because that is how the whole thing is, that is what the whole thing is built on. And so, in conclusion, let me just note that the left also, the great allies of the Islamic Jihad in the world today, also are terrorists. And they are also built top to bottom, the whole thing is built on terror. And we saw that with the murder of Charlie Kirk, but that was not the first time. Every time the left has come to power, what did they do? In the modern world, from the French Revolution to the Soviet Union, to Communist China, to Democratic Kampuchea, to every other one you want to name, they instituted a reign of terror. And Solzhenitsyn, the great Soviet dissident, he said that they would arrest innocent people. And the wives and the fathers and mothers and whoever would go to the authorities and say, you arrested my son, my husband, whoever, and it was all a mistake, he didn't do anything. And they'd throw her in too. Because they knew that the word would go out and the rest of the population would be terrified into submission. And so, terror is the hallmark of the left. It's no surprise. People are all, I understand that there's a lot of shock at the death of Charlie Kirk. But there shouldn't be any surprise. This is what the left has always been. They've just been hiding it because it wasn't time yet. Now they think they're in a powerful enough position, that they've won over enough people, that they've brainwashed enough of the culture, that they can be what they are. But they've always been all about terror. That's the primary reason why they get along so well with the jihadis. So, the primary antidote is not to allow yourself to be terrorized. Stand up. And you say, well, I may get hurt. Yeah. You may get killed. And that's what we have to be willing to stand for. Stand despite of, I should say. Remember the Declaration of Independence. It ends that after listing all the reasons why they were rebelling against the tyranny of the British Crown, they said, to this great cause we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And they knew that all three the terrorists would be coming for. The tyrants. And it's the same now. It's always the same in all these different scenarios. So, to the great struggle for freedom today, let us once again pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Thank you.
Wow. More applause for Reverend Spencer. Speaking truth, speaking clarity. Ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Spencer. Look him up online. Buy all 31 books at this point?
32 books. Buy all 32 of his books. Support his work. Visit Jihad Watch. We're now going to move to a panel